Hello, everyone. Today I'm very excited. I have JJ here with me, who's interested in sharing her story with the group. And I really want to tell her that I am so happy that we actually get to hear your story. It's so beautiful that everyone does, who's ready to share, comes forward and does that because the more we share our story, the more we learn and connect to one another, and that really grows a really strong community. So, I want to thank everyone for joining the group and being part of this healing process that we're in together. As myself, I'm a holistic recovery coach. So, if at any point in time you feel like reaching out, feel free. And I'm sure JJ is probably interested in also offering some support and help to others as well. So, JJ, why don't you
Absolutely.
introduce yourself?
Okay.
And
Thank you, Julia, for this opportunity. I'm extremely honored. So my name's JJ. I am 47 years old. I like to start out with some numbers to kind of put things, kind of qualify myself a little bit. So I'm 47 years old. I spent almost 30 years in active addiction. I have been arrested 9 times. I had 6 overdoses, 4 attempted suicides. I have 2 children. I had 2 marriages that ended in divorce, all as a result. And one Fox 5 News story too, all as a result of my addiction. And so for me, I started out using when I was 15, started using marijuana and then alcohol as well. Is it okay if I talk about substances
oh,
or?
yeah, yeah,
Okay, just making
no
sure.
filter.
Um, okay, so I started out with using marijuana and alcohol, and I didn't have a I wouldn't say a terrible childhood, right? Um, but there were issues that I had growing up as a child. My father was not around. My mother worked all the time, so I didn't have a lot of parental supervision. I was mainly raised by babysitters. I did suffer some sexual molestation as a child as a result of that. And so like there was a lot of and I realized later on in recovery that I had a lot of abandonment issues, a lot of neglect issues, a lot of of lack of self-worth, right? So all that to say is I started using at a very young age, and it gave me a sense of fitting in, a sense of belonging, a sense of acceptance. So I used throughout my teenage years, and then probably in my early 20s, like that's when the drinking really got heavy for me. And I had dibbled and dabbled in some other things, like back then it was speed, cocaine, stuff like that. Had dibbled and dabbled a little bit. And then but I always had this sense of like, always trying to be an overachiever, never quite feeling adequate, never, like, no matter how much I did or what I, how I tried to excel, I always felt like I wasn't good enough at things. I didn't have a lot of value in myself. Um, so I thought, that, okay, so in life, I thought, okay, I had a career, I worked in logistics. And so I thought, okay, well, the next step in society says is to get married, right? So I got married very young, thinking that, marriage would fix me because then basically I was trying to fix him, right? And I realized later on that I was the broken one, and in trying to fix him, it kept me from looking at myself and the issues I had. So then, as we were in the marriage, I thought, okay, well, kids will give me a purpose. Kids will help me feel fulfilled. So I did end up having 2 children, which I'm grateful for. I have a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old. That marriage ended in divorce. There was a lot of toxicity, a lot of abuse on both parts. It wasn't just him, it was me too. The drinking resulted in it being a very volatile relationship. So it ended in divorce. So then I'm a single mom, right? Single mom, 2 kids, and thinking that like I need another person in my life. Like I need to be needed. I need a man in my life to help me be a whole person, right? My drinking at this point, I was drinking 7 days a week. I worked from home in my job, so I didn't have a job to go to. I've done a lot of traveling for my job, and I drank 7 days a week. I met my second husband, and with that came a whole another world that I really hadn't known a lot about. I was introduced to more drugs. And at this point, I married him not knowing that he hadn't suffered from mental illness, and not knowing his addiction and how deep it was. But I was a person that, like I felt like I needed to help him and I needed to save him and I needed to do all these things for him, never looking at my own issues. So with that, in that marriage, I was introduced to crack cocaine. And so I started using that. And by this time I was probably, that was in 2014. So I was 40 something. So like as it went on, like my addiction progressed into like alcohol and pills and marijuana to eventually into crack cocaine. So I introduced to that. And that relationship was very toxic. It was very, he was narcissistic as well. And all that to say is like, I didn't know what a healthy relationship was. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what it meant I had never been in a relationship that wasn't toxic, that wasn't abusive, that wasn't all these things. And so as each relationship that I had, and those are just the marriages, but as each relationship I had, it was more toxic and more toxic and more. And I was addicted to not just the drugs and alcohol in my life, but the chaos that came with that. I was addicted to trying to be obsessed. I was obsessed with people, like trying to fix them in order not to fix myself. So during that period was when the arrests started. There was like I said, it was very volatile. I had a battery arrest, a charge for battery with him. That was actually during that time was because of a probation sentence. I was introduced to Narcotics Anonymous. And when I look back on it now, I realized that was in my higher power is God, what God was doing for me that I couldn't do for myself because I was introduced. I didn't know there was another way to live. I didn't know there was another way. I had used my whole life. Everybody I knew used. Everybody. I mean, it was just my parents drank. I didn't know anybody that didn't use. I didn't know any other way. So I was introduced to the rooms of Narcotics Anonymous in 2015. But at that time, I am still in the marriage. I didn't think I had a problem. I didn't think that my using was a problem. I didn't think, and by this time, my drugs had gone from had graduated from crack cocaine to methamphetamine use. So again, I didn't think I had a problem. And so I go to a couple of meetings and I'm like, yeah, I don't belong here. Like I can control my using, right? It's not a problem. So the relationship continued. And through this relationship being as volatile as it was, and suspicion of drug use by my family and the father of my children, there came a point where my children were taken from me because of this. And so that actually, I felt like my family had turned their back on me and I felt like everybody was against me. But they saw things that I couldn't see. They saw this relationship for what it was and I just couldn't. There was no clarity in my life. So I lost my children to their dad. And that was when literally like my addiction spiraled out of control because at that point I had no purpose. I had no desire to live. At that point, in the marriage, he and I ended up losing our home. We were living hotel to hotel, trying to do whatever to get the next one, right? So eventually, things happen and he gets in some legal trouble. I had some legal trouble. I've been arrested a couple of times. He got arrested a couple of times and he ended up going to prison, unfortunately. But I continued to stay out there. So then my using graduated from methamphetamines to heroin. And at that point, I actually became an IV user, which I never thought would happen. I never thought that any of this would happen, right? But it did. So at this point in my life, I now have, the only thing I have holding me on is I had a job, but I wasn't present at my job. I didn't participate in my job. I didn't do the things that were required of me. And ultimately, I lost the home I lived in. And then I ended up losing the job as well. Like I ended up I was homeless by this time. Nobody in my family would have anything to do with me. I had burnt every relationship. And still, even yet, like I still did not think that I had a problem. And so I get arrested again, and this was in 2018. And after having a conversation with one of the arresting officers, like I'm arguing with him. He's like, "You're a drug addict." I'm like, "No, I'm not. Like, I don't have a drug problem." And so he and I can't remember now exactly what he said because unfortunately I was high at the time, but he said something to me that day that all of a sudden like this light bulb went off, and I thought, okay, and I'm in the jail at this point, and I'm like, and I've been there like 4 days. And I'm like, okay, maybe I do have a problem because I've been here 4 days. My parents don't know where I'm at. My children don't know where I'm at. Like nobody even knows I'm here. And the people that I was associating with at the time, they didn't care that I was there, right? So I thought maybe I do have a problem. So I ended up getting out, and I decided that I was going to go into a treatment program. And so I went a little ways up north. I live south of Atlanta, so I went to Lawrenceville, went to a treatment program, and spent 30 days there. And I thought, okay. And in my mind, it was like, okay, so these are the 12 steps. Okay, step one, yep, powerless. Step two, I believe in a power greater than myself. And step three could be, so I was like, yeah, 1, 2, and 3, I'm good. Where's a sponsor? Let me do step 4, right? Like that's how I thought it worked. It's not the way it works. So I was in that program for about 30 days, and I let my pride and ego get the best of me, and I got pissed off. Sorry, got angry with the with the director of the facility, and I was like, you know what? I don't need to be here. You guys aren't doing anything for me that I can't do for myself. So I ended up leaving that facility, and I relapsed within 24 hours, and I spent another year out there. By this time, I had gotten arrested again. This was in January of 2019. I was arrested again. And that's the story that actually made Fox 5 News. Now, mind you, in this time, there were several times that I had overdosed. There were several times I had tried to commit suicide because I didn't know a way out. The pain was so great. I didn't know what to do. And like everywhere I turned, I kept hitting a brick wall because I kept trying to do things my way. I would change one substance to another. I would go to a meeting and say I'm clean, but I'm only clean from this drug. I try to do things the way that suited me because I had all the answers and nobody knew my life better than I did, right? But nothing worked. Didn't matter where I went, didn't matter what drug I used, didn't matter, like none of that mattered because I always ended up in the same result, right? So I get arrested again in 2019. And I convince everyone that I'm clean, the drugs weren't mine, and this, that, and the other, and they weren't, but I convinced everyone that I was clean, right? So I get out, and by this time, I have pending court dates. I have, I've starting to lose the, any relationship I have left with my mom and my stepdad. I lost my father when I was in active addiction, so like I didn't have him anymore. But what really hit me was at this point I had supervised visits with my children, and they were over visiting for a weekend. I was staying with my mom, and I was trying to, I don't know, hang out with them and spend some time with them, watch a movie, and they were both like, "We really don't want to." Like they had no interest in spending any time with me. And all of a sudden there was this thought that I had that I need to change. And what does that look like? And I'm going, and the thought was I'm going to lose my children to themselves. It doesn't matter that okay, I lost them their dad. I did. I lost home, I lost marriages, but they were like the most important thing to me in my life. And I was about to lose them to themselves, and I would have no one to blame. And to this point, everything that I had been through and everything that had happened to me, I blamed someone else. It was always the ex-husband's fault, the police's fault, it was my parents' fault because they didn't love me enough. It was everybody else's fault, right? And so this realization happened, and I had a couple of warrants out for me. And now, mind you, I'm sorry, mind you, I had some interaction with the Rooms Narcotics Anonymous, and I had a little bit of information, and so I decided I was going to go back into treatment. But I wanted to do it again my way. I wanted to stay in the area where my kids were. I wanted to do things this way, and I didn't want to do this, and I wasn't going to go over here. And but again, my God did something for me that I couldn't do for myself. And so I had a couple of active warrants on me, and I was arrested literally within a week of making that decision that I needed to do something different. And so this time, because of the active warrants and what they were for, I wasn't going to get out. anytime soon. I had to sit. And it was in sitting in that jail cell. I knew a couple of people because I've been in there before, and people that I've been using with. But there was one particular person that I had connected with, and we kind of knew each other on the outside. But I was in there, and I'm in there trying to spin my wheels. And like, how can I get out? And what can I try to manipulate anything I can, to get out? And so I remember her saying to me, we were actually arguing about why I was in there. And she's like, "You're in here because of all the choices you made." I'm like, "No, that's not why I'm in here. I'm in here because it's so and so's fault, or it's this person's fault, or that person." Still not being able to accept any responsibility for anything being my fault. And so we're arguing, and finally, that's when she said, she's like, "No, you're in here because of every decision you've made is what got you here, right, wrong, or indifferent. No matter if you were lied to, manipulated, whatever, still made a choice." And so all of a sudden, this light bulb goes off, and I'm like, wow, like that was a huge like moment for me because for the first time in my life, I realized that every decision I made, regardless of what the reason was behind the decision. And so it was that moment that I was like, okay, so it's my fault, and how can I fix this? What can I do? And mind you, like I said, I had some information or some experience in the rooms or whatever, and so I made a decision that day that I was going to do whatever it took when I got out, and whenever that was going to be, right? So fast forward to so that was actually so went incarcerated October the 5th. 2019. My clean date is October 6th, 2019, because that was 21st after the last time I used. Um, so I spent 45 days in the county jail. And so when I got out, I made a decision to do whatever it took. And so I got connected with an RCO in Coweta County called Coweta Force. And I'm not sure if you know what an RCO is, but an RCO is a recovery centered organization that helps support recovery services in the community in which it exists in, right? So I'd gotten connected with them while I was in jail. And then when I like literally the day I got out, I went to their facility and I was like, "Look, you guys have meetings, you guys have recovery support. How can you help me? What can I do?" And so luckily, their facility where a lot of meetings get held, AA and NA, a lot of meetings get held. And so I literally would go there every day because I didn't have anybody that I knew that it didn't use. I didn't have anywhere to go other than I was living with my parents at the time. And they didn't understand. They know more about the disease of addiction now because of what I've been through, but they didn't understand what it's like to be an addict and having these thoughts and urges to use when you don't want to. I mean, there was a point in my life that I was using against my will. And so I went every day and I would just hang out there because I didn't have anywhere else to go. And so eventually, after, going to meetings, I did more than 90/90, but I did 90/90. I got a sponsor. And within a few short months, I started to work the steps. And I can remember just feeling like hope, but not hope. Like I could see it in other people, but I didn't know if I was going to see it in me. Like I didn't know if my life was going to be able to be different. And so I remember meeting with my sponsor and going over step one, and I cried. Admitting the powerlessness that I had in my life had been so unmanageable. And then meeting with her again and going over step two, and I cried, and step three. And I'm like, I just want to be normal. I just want to have a normal life. I don't know what life is like without music. I don't know what life is like without chaos and all these things. And so within that time frame, my daughter decided that she wanted to come live with me. And so like that was a change early on in my recovery. So she comes to live with me, continue to work steps. I got a job. And then I continued to just push through and persevere. And in all honesty, it took me about 18 months to work all 12 steps, but I worked them all. And I can say as a result of that, I am nowhere near the person I used to be. Like today, I know what it means to have integrity, and I live with integrity. Today, I know what honesty means, and I live with honesty. And today, I know what having courage and faith. Like I used to know it. I used to think that I knew what those things were, but today, like I know, and today I live those things. I don't just know what they are. I live those things. And so as a result of that, in November of 2020, I got a job at an addiction treatment facility in my area. I started out as a tech in the housing, and within about 8 months, I was promoted to case manager. So that's where I currently work. I'm a case manager for an addiction treatment facility. I In April of last year of 2021, I started a meeting, a Narcotics Anonymous meeting in our area because we needed one on that day. And, what is the point of a meeting is to carry the message the addict who still suffers. And sometimes I'm that addict, right? So I started a meeting. It's been going on for a year now. It's going very well. We also, the meeting actually became a group, and we are a part of the Southwest Atlanta area of Narcotics Anonymous, which is fairly new. It's only been in existence for a little over a year now. And so with all that, so in the meantime, like my son, I now have custody of both my children. I have a phenomenal relationship with my mother, my stepfather. I'm in the first ever healthy romantic relationship I've ever had in my life. And I have a life of freedom today. And it's because of my recovery. I have a life that is peaceful and serenity, and that's not to say that bad things don't happen. Like I still go through things. An example would be in February of 2020, my daughter was diagnosed with a rare artery disease. And we didn't know what was going to happen with that. And she she's okay now, but like she has to. So this disease is not curable. It is progressive and it is potentially fatal. But that was very difficult to go through at 4 months clean, but I did it. I've gone through loss of family members and loss of friends. I've had people in treatment that I've treated that have gone back out, and they've relapsed and they're no longer with us. Like I've been through some things. I was I still had all that court stuff that I had to deal with, and I dealt with it clean. It's all behind me now. Like my charges were, they were resolved. I still, I have consequences, of course, to my actions, but the charges were, the issues were resolved. Got through that clean. And then about 2 weeks ago, I was diagnosed with lupus, which was a big life change. So there's been a lot of things that have happened, but I've done it clean, and I will, continue to push forward in my recovery. And I speak out about my recovery because there was a time in my life that I didn't have any hope. And I see anybody that ever knew me before and knows me now can see, like, even I see, like, there's just this huge difference in my life. And to be able to share that experience and that strength and that hope with someone else, and to be able to see someone else's life change is the most amazing thing I've ever been a part of. And so today I sponsor other women. I advocate for recovery in any way that I can, because it truly, truly didn't just save my life, it gave me a life. So that's my story.
It's beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
love your story. It's beautiful. There's so many parts that I can just personally connect to, and I'm sure so many other people will be able to as well. Um, I'll just go back. I took a few notes because I really love some of these parts in your story, and I could really relate to the self worth at the beginning of how the addiction started to take place within your life, and kind of became that tumbleweed of it's going to keep growing, right? Because we're searching for something that we're looking externally, right? um
Absolutely.
and that there was part of my piece.
Mm,
I struggled with that at the beginning, and I didn't understand how somebody else couldn't give me what I was looking for.
right. Exactly. Exactly.
Like,
And that was the same thing for me, is that, and for a long time, and I talk about this too sometimes, is that, I eventually got to the point where, like, I used people the way I use drugs, because
mm-hmm,
I needed that validation. I needed to feel self-worth. I needed to feel loved. I needed to feel accepted. I needed to feel all these things, not ever realizing that all the time, all these things that I needed were right here inside of me. And I
mm-hmm,
just didn't know how to find them. I didn't know how to make them, come about. And it's been through working the 12 steps and realizing what I putting a label on what I needed. And now that I know what that is, And honestly, being able to be of service to other people, and seeing other people, just seeing their lives change, and has been so rewarding for me, right? That's what, and being able to do things today without expectation of getting anything in return, just being of service to other people and loving other people that can't love themselves, because that's what was given to me. I was loved when I couldn't love myself. People helped me with things that they don't even know how much they helped me with, right? But and it wasn't until, for me, like, I worked the steps, that I was able to see what my character defects are and what my assets are, and being able to understand, how, which one do I feed, and how do I feed that, and how do I raise my self-worth, right? And it's being able to, for me, give to others, understanding what I bring to the table. And today, because I know today I bring to the table integrity, honesty, loyalty, communication, courage, faith, love. Like, I bring those things, that I know what my value is today. And I don't accept anything less than what I know what my worth is.
I think it's so important, and I love that you say that about, you show up and you give your support the best way that we know how to, because when you're in active addiction, your 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 body, your soul, your whole your being is very much lost.
Very
Um,
lost.
you even though, like you were saying throughout your story, like you didn't think you had an issue, and you weren't an addict, and eventually people kept pointing it out, right? And then it
Right.
takes how many people to point that out to you before you're like, wait a second,
Maybe
okay,
there is
let me.
something to this.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
maybe they're telling me this for a reason, right? And I did the same thing. I mean, many people had to tell me that I had an issue and a problem, and for me, it was all the people that worked at the hospital who seen me on way more regularly than they needed to.
right,
Oh, you're back, right?
right, right,
Not a good relationship to have, but again, they gave me, I think, a little piece of inspiration and love that I was looking for. So there was definitely something there for me
right,
that, I kept finding along the way. And the other part about toxic relationships, um, I went into, and I'm sure many other people can relate to this as well, about having to or trying to fix somebody else, right? Instead of focusing on yourself. And I did the exact same thing. I went into many, many relationships of, they were just as broken as I was, they were just as
right,
hopeless. And
right.
I'm going to fix them. That was the thought. It's okay.
Right.
We're going to do this together, right? But it was so toxic. And
Mhm.
um your mind almost feels like it's its own addiction. That chaos that we live in,
Yes.
and that time frame is
Right.
has its own addictive um pull to it.
It does. It does. And that was the thing, is that, and I can remember talking to my sponsor about this, and she was like, "You're addicted to the chaos." And because, and there was a situation that came up, and it was something in I think it was with my mom. And she was like, you don't seem to realize that you are creating this. And I was. And I can remember, growing up for my whole life, my mom would always tell me, "Jay, you have so much drama, so much drama." And I'm like, "I don't have drama. Drama just follows me." But I was the one creating it, because I'm feeding into it all the time, right? But that toxicity, it's like, it's, and that's the people talk about being addicted to pain and being addicted to this, and it's true. I was addicted to the toxicity. I was addicted to thinking that, I could fix someone, that, and I would find the most broken one out there, thinking that I could change them, all the while not even realizing that I was the one that needed to change. And I know that today, and I have changed. And that's in it is amazing. I honestly, Julia, I really thought for a long time that, and now that I understand what the disease of addiction is, I can look back and think that I was going to die like that. Like, that was my truth. That was going to be what I accepted. And I'm so grateful. Every day I'm so grateful that I found recovery. I can't speak out loud enough about it. Right? I just can't.
That's
So,
why we're here, right? Sharing our story, being a part of the community, and just hoping that somebody can find a little piece in them that says, I need recovery too. How do I do that? How do
Do
I
I
get
do that?
there?
Right.
Because there's so many, I posted a video a little bit ago, and we had lost, my boyfriend and I, we had lost another friend to mental health, different things that were going on as far as we're aware of. And we just, there's so many that we lose too soon. So,
Absolutely.
and I know
Absolutely.
working with a treatment center, I'm sure, like you were saying, you see it come and go all the time.
You do, and that's one of the things that we talk about at work a lot, amongst the staff is that like, it's so heartbreaking when somebody does go back out, right? And you feel like you want it sometimes more than they do, right? And that's okay that you
Yeah.
do, right? Because I know what it's like to be on this side, and they may not quite yet, but there's also, on the other side of that, the ones that don't go back out, that do, and I see them make the changes, and it's like, yes, this is why I do what I do, right? Regardless if they make it or not, like this is why I do what I do, because
Mm-hmm.
and something was said to me a while back, and it stuck with me, is that as long as there's breath, there's hope. Right. And so that's what I believe in. So, and as long as there is, I will continue to do what I
Beautiful. I love that.
do.
All right. Well, I think that's all the questions I had, and I want to just thank you again for sharing your story, and just spreading a little bit more of that hope for the ones that are still out there, and still need a little bit of guidance, to find their way through. I did have one more question for you.
Mhm.
How when you were at the shifting stage from being in addiction over into the recovery, and you were showing up to, I can't remember, ROI or something, I can't remember what you called
The
it.
RCO, Kelly DeForce.
RCO,
Yeah.
yes. What was that mindset that was there any shifts that you remember happening that just really helped to pull you through those final moments of making that change?
I think it was the fact that so they were actually coming into the jail, and they were talking about recovery and what services they could provide outside. And so they were bringing in mentorship for the men, and they were bringing in yoga for the women. And the yoga was great. Like, who gets yoga in jail, right? Like, that doesn't happen anywhere, right? But it did where I was. And so I think it was, just hearing them speak about their own recovery when they would come in and talk to us, and being able to experience that. And so getting out, like seeing because everyone that works there is in recovery. The executive director, he's got 12 years clean. There's another lady that runs the front. She's got 8 years clean. Like, everybody had a significant amount of clean time. And I thought, I want what they have, and what do they have? And at that point, it was that I saw happiness, and I saw peace, and I saw freedom. There was a freedom that they had that I desired, that I had not had. And having had, I think too, that period of time where I was in the county jail gave me time to actually allow my head to clear,
Mm,
because I had not gone without using for so long that I couldn't have a rational thought, because it was only and always about getting the next one, and getting the next one, and getting the next one. So having that time, and I think this is why it's so important, like in treatment, to have that time. And it's, whether wherever you get clean, if it's in jail, if it's in treatment, if it's whatever, having that time to just allow your head to clear, right, of all the fog and everything, and being able to really look at yourself. And I think that's what it was, is by the time I got there, I knew what they had to offer. And I had some clarity about my responsibility, what had happened in my life, and the choices I made were the result of where I was at, right? And I didn't want to do that anymore. And the fact that, like, regardless of what I needed to do to change, the willingness that I had was so strong, that, and the encouragement that I got from them, the support that I got from them, the love that when I walked in their door, it was very warm and inviting. And it was, hey, we've been where you are. We've been to jail. We've seen, like, and look, we've recovered. How can we help you recover? And so I think it was that hope that they gave me when I first got there, and then, like I said, just loving me when I couldn't love myself, and being able to, to just fall apart and figure out how do I rebuild myself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they allowed that for me. And that was huge because then, and again, I think it's the fact that they understood exactly where I had been. The details of our stories might be different, but to understand there's just this understanding between two addicts or multitude of addicts, you know, that like the feelings, the way that we think, the way that we act, like everything that goes along with addiction, right? There's just this understanding that another addict has. And I think once I finally realized that and admitted that I was an addict and that they could relate to me, there was no stopping. I was willing and the honesty part took a little while to get there, but the open mindedness and the willingness was there for me. And I just, you know, and I think like I said, a lot of it just had to do with the fact that they just accepted me for exactly who I was and loved me because of who I was.
Mm.
And that was huge.
I will add to this little video that treatment is a huge part of, like you said, finding clarity and giving you the chance for that, whether it's 30, 60, 90 days, different programs have so much beneficial pieces to them. I went in for 90 days when I was 21, and it wasn't my final ending point. I did relapse after.
Mhm.
And but if anyone is looking for clarity and support and love, absolutely, treatment was really wonderful that way. And I find that when you're starting to get to the end of your days there, finding support on the outside and having those pieces in place, I wish I would have done more.
Right.
More of that, you get put back into the world where it's like, okay, go find a job, renting, you have responsibilities again, and I didn't know how to balance those pieces. And so, of course, I went into looking for, a toxic relationship that, again, could support me and
Right.
my horrible habits, as unfortunate as it was. But I will say that if you go into treatment, build that longevity of, recovery,
Mhm.
and then take that next step to supporting on the other side as well so that you can keep going.
Right.
Join the community, give back to the community. There's so much support work out there. Just find that next piece to keep you going, that kind of thing. So yeah.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we do in our treatment facility is that we try to help people build a foundation because eventually treatment does end, right? And you've got to go back out in the world. And so we try to introduce them back into the world by stepping them down in different phases of getting a job and getting them to meetings and getting them connected with people and getting a sponsor and doing all these things that can help them when they get out there, right? Because I mean, you've got to have support, you've got to have a network, you've got to have, otherwise, we end up doing the same things and repeating the same cycles because it's what we know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think the one piece that hadn't changed for me was that I still didn't understand how to love myself completely. Um, Whether that would have came in longer treatment time, I never
Mhm.
know. I can't go
You
back
never
into
know.
all that,
Right.
but I was still searching for that piece, and that's why I took the steps I did and actions that ended up
Right.
being a lot worse for me. But we all have our story, and
We do. Absolutely.
we all,
Absolutely. So,
hopefully, I hope to help more find their way through the path there. So,
and
all
I
right.
just want to tell you that I think it's amazing what you're doing and I'm so grateful to be a part of it. And like I mean, it's pretty awesome. So keep doing it.
Thank you. Thank you. If anyone wants to reach out, I'll have all of it in the write up that's going to go along with this video. So, your contact information, if you're okay with sharing that. If anyone wants to reach out, find a little bit more support, get some answers, get that kind of momentum going, anything like that will all be included in the video at the end there. So,
All
all
right.
right. Well, I'm going to just end this one. Thank you everyone for listening and watching.